Hello, and welcome to this module on assistive technology and writing. Learners write for a wide variety of reasons. At an early age, many children begin by writing what we call narratives, writing about their own personal experiences. As they grow older, they start to write for more academic requirements, perhaps writing lab reports, and continuing on into high school and college, writing longer expository texts where the goal is to communicate specific information to the reader. In this module, we will talk about a range of writing goals and ways that assistive technology can support the learner in successfully communicating their ideas in print and also enjoying the writing process. Let's start by looking at a writing sample from a grade 2 student with a learning disability. Take a good look. What are some things that are going well for this writer? So I suspect you found this somewhat challenging. Some of the good things are, clearly, there's some interpretable words here, so you can, with a bit of work, figure out some of the words being used here. This seems to be some kind of story about a graveyard. There might be zombies involved. A lot of people are dying. Let's look at the story the child was working to write. So when the child retold the story to an adult, this is what the child had been working to convey. One day a girl's mom died. She cried and cried. Her really good sister Tanya, who was really bad, told her father, "Let's go see my mom in the grave." They all said, "Let's go." People from the graveyard arrived. The father said, "Hit the road, Jack." Even the mom came up. The father and children died. The end. So what's going well? Well, it's an interesting story in its own dark way. There's kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end. A little hard to follow. Some appropriate use of capitalization and punctuation. Not entirely clear why everybody dies at the end, but clearly the child has some sense of what should be involved in a story. What are the concerns? Well, clearly it's difficult to make sense of what the child is trying to say based on the original spelling. The structure is challenging. You have the feeling that things have been left out or not fully conveyed to the reader. It's unclear whether any editing took place, whether the writer was able to anticipate the reader's questions and think of ways to address those questions in future drafts. Let's look at a more typical grade 2 text. The Titanic. It is April 10th, 1912, 2 years before my great-grandma was born. The Titanic is going to travel all the way from England to America. Newspapers call the Titanic the Wonder Ship. The Titanic had restaurants, a post office, even a gym with a toy camel ride. The Titanic has another nickname, the Rich Man's Special. The Titanic has lied on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean for 86 years. This guy named Robert Ballard found the Titanic. It was pretty close to its destination when it sank. It was sad because only 1,100 people survived. The people who survived got on a ship called the Carpitha. So again, interesting to think about what's going well and what is a challenge for this author. There's still a few spelling problems, but they don't prevent you from reading and enjoying the story. There's a clear sense of a beginning, a middle, and an end. And also, the author seems to have a good idea of what information the reader needs to know or to learn to make sense of the story, and tells the story in an organized way. The second story is a good illustration of what's expected to meet the Common Core standard in writing at a grade 2 level. The Common Core standard states that the learner will write narratives in which they recount a well-elaborated event or short sequence of events, include details to describe actions, thoughts, and feelings, use temporal words to signal event order, and provide a sense of closure. The trick with writing is we can't just look at the finished product. We need to think about the steps of the writing process and what skilled and less skilled writers do at each step in the writing process, and how we can provide instruction and perhaps assistive technology supports so that the writers will be more successful at each step in the writing process. So the first step in the writing process is the planning process. At this stage, people think, or at least skilled writers think about what they're going to write in their text. They may do point form notes, they may draw little diagrams, but they try and think about the overall structure and perhaps even some of the supporting details that they're going to include in their written work. When we look at unskilled writers, including many writers with learning disabilities, they typically spend little time thinking before writing. Even when given specific instructions, say in a test-taking format, to spend 5 minutes planning or organizing their text before they start to write, often, unless they're given specific instruction in how to create an outline, they just dive into the writing process. And for these students, it's a little bit like trying to drive somewhere without a map. They just head out onto the road, so to speak, get lost, and in the case of writing, run out of things to say fairly quickly because they really don't have an overall structure that they're trying to follow. When we look at the writing or the first draft that's produced by skilled writers, frequently these individuals use styles that they've learned from reading. So they take advantage of what they learn as readers and incorporate some of those same styles in their own writing. When we look at unskilled writers, they often do not demonstrate a good understanding of their audience. The challenge of writing is that there is no immediate feedback from the reader, so it's different from a conversation where I watch you in a sense as I'm talking, and if I see a look of puzzlement on your face, I know I need to provide additional information or try and express myself in a different way. With writing, you don't get that immediate feedback from the reader. So as an author, I need to anticipate the questions of the readers. So as I'm writing, I need to be thinking about, does this make sense? Have I told you what you need to know to make sense of this? Thinking back to the graveyard story, people just pop up and then disappear. So you have the sense that there's probably more of a story going on there that we haven't been told about, and it's very difficult for us as readers to make sense of this jumbled sequence of events. And again, clearly with the graveyard story, you saw how difficulty with spelling made it challenging for you as a reader to make sense of the text. Typically when we look at skilled writers, they're fairly adept at detecting and correcting mechanical errors, by which I mean spelling errors, punctuation errors, capitalization errors, those sorts of things. And they're also good at using editing time as a time to revise for meaning. So they reread their text, think about what additional information needs to be provided by the reader, think about flow, try and anticipate the reader's questions and answer them within the text, that sort of thing. Revising tends to be far more difficult for unskilled writers, including writers with learning disabilities. These students experience a lot of difficulty in detecting and correcting mechanical errors. They also experience difficulty revising for meaning, so unless they're specifically taught how to read through a text and anticipate the questions of readers, typically this is not something they do simply based on instructions to revise for meaning. They typically need explicit instruction or some type of other supports in reviewing and revising their text for meaning. So we know that many writers with disabilities and students with learning disabilities are going to struggle with the writing process. One solution is to provide specific instruction in some of the skills that we've talked about. So to teach them how to plan a text that they're going to write, to teach them how to more effectively proofread and pick up on mechanical errors and correct spelling errors, and to try and better anticipate questions of readers and answer them within their written text. So instruction is always a key component of a writing intervention. There are also assistive technologies that may prove to be of benefit to students with disabilities as they write. And we'll be talking more about these different technologies within these modules. At this stage, all I really want to communicate was that for each stage of the writing process, there's different assistive technology tools that can be used, and there are a wide variety of software applications that may be useful to students with disabilities in the writing process. So again, welcome to this module on assistive technology for writing, and I hope you enjoy learning about the different tools that can be used to support the writing process.